Chair.
All right, good morning. My name is Joan Kessner, and as chair, I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation for Monday, May 20th, 2024. I want to thank Debbie Royce for all her work and efforts making this meeting possible, and I'd like to recognize our board members in attendance. I have Sam Capitano, Chator Donovan, Eric Wright, representing the mayor of the city of Buffalo is Trevor Griffiths. Our legal counsel here is Steve Golick. Representing the county of Erie is Dan Castle, and the Honorable Mark Holenkarst joined us today. We're very honored. And I'm board member Constant Leiden and Leslie Zemsky, and our president is Mark Wendell. Thank you for coming today. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting will be webcast at a later time. Is that correct? Okay. We welcome public comment on today's agenda. I will note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on the agenda items by submitting their written comments by 9 a.m. today. I'd like to state for the record that no comments were received from the public concerning today's agenda items. I also will note that we do not have members of the public attending today. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substance portion of the meeting, I'd like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the agenda items. If so, I would like to ask you to please make appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourself from any discussion or vote regarding such items. Anybody? Conflict? No? Very good. Hearing none, I will also note that the minutes of the March 11th, 2024 directors meeting will be presented at our next meeting once they are fully finalized. Now I would like to call on Mark Wendell, our ECHDC president, to note that the remaining items on today's agenda. Please start us off with a request for authorization for the corporation to adopt its 2024 procurement guidelines. Mark, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Kessner. The first item, as well as the second item, are procedural items of Empire State Development, our parent company, have set procurement guidelines and property disposition guidelines. I'm going to turn the description for the first item over to our legal counsel, Steve Golick, to describe the item.
Sure. Each year, under the Public Authorities Accountability Act, ESD and all its subsidiaries have to adopt procurement guidelines. It governs the policies and procedures for ESD and ECHDC for procuring everything from services to any contracts we have. Basically have to comply with the procurement guidelines. Nothing really changed since last year. They did redo the procurement guidelines to make it more friendly, more easy to read, filled in some things, but no substantive changes. In a nutshell, everything has to be bid out unless there's a specific reason not to. Contracts that exceed $250,000 need board approval. Under that, there's no need for board approval. That authority rests with Mark, the president of ECHDC. So annually we do this. ESD board adopted these guidelines in March, and we're asking the board to approve the guidelines for another year.
Thank you, Steve. Mark, are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Sam. Second.
I thought it was Sam second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Next is the request for authorization for the corporation to adopt its 2024 property disposition guidelines. Mark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm going to turn this over to our legal counsel, Steve Golick, to talk about the new guidelines. Again, we adopt them every year, but these are the property disposition guidelines that we utilize for acquisition.
Yeah, under the under the Public Authorities Accountability Act, Annually, ESD and its subsidiaries need to adopt property disposition guidelines, and that primarily for ECHDC is dealing with real property and the processes that need to be followed. The guidelines follow the requirements of the PAAA. Generally speaking, again, they should be property disposition should be done through a competitive process unless there's specific statutory authorizations that allow that. So for this, again, ESD's board adopted these policies and procedures in March, and we're asking the board to follow suit and adopt them for the next year.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to this item? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Eric? Who's second? Oh, Shatora, thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Mark, please continue and present the final item on today's agenda, a request, among other things, authorization to enter into sale, purchase, and development agreement with a preferred developer in connection with the North Odd Block redevelopment project. Mark?
Thank you, Chair Kessner. On April 17th, 2023, the ECHDC board designated the development team of Penrose, New York developer, along with Urban Solutions, doing business as M Squared, and authorized the corporation staff at that time to negotiate the final terms of the sale, purchase, and development agreement between the corporation and the preferred developer. Those terms are being finalized, and this will allow us to enter into and sign the agreement moving to a next step. This is the next step. So the designated developer was the first step. The land distribution to the designated developer is the next step in this process of getting this project started. This project is also being overseen by the New York State Housing and Community Renewal Organization, and to assist the developer in meeting all the due diligence and to design strategies and program. This allows them to move forward with their funding and securement, and then hit the deadlines with the HCR for submission, so we can start construction in Q2 of 2025. The one thing I'll point out is that this agreement we have has a due diligence period that goes until July 2025. So they have the time to get organized, get their funding set, go through the ACR progress within that time. But that is a kind of a mile marker for us with this agreement to make sure that we keep them on path and hit that Q2 target for construction. The CAM, one of $1.15 per area, is the same that we had in the RFP process. ECHDC is also, which was included in the RFP, $10 million for site infrastructure and making sure it meets the guidelines that we set forth and making sure we have a public space within this design, which we believe that this developer has established.
Can you explain the CAM a little bit more? I don't understand who we still own something that they would pay CAM on?
They work in the transfer. They pay a CAM for the public community space, so we can get the CAM helps us maintain and put on lights.
But we're not the landlord. That's why I was
No, but we
confused by
do
the CAM term.
the CAM term. We have a CAM with the other sites that we have developed or have had developers develop to help us kind of maintain the area around.
Okay.
As part of the Canal site district.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's a landlord of the district, so to
Yes.
speak, then they pay a percentage to help with maintenance.
Correct.
Okay, I didn't understand.
Correct.
Thank you.
And is that central to their development or just like where, I think Leslie's question is the right one. Where are we responsible for the upkeep in those public
The
areas?
perimeter, like it's the canals that abut it. Like, we have to maintain the canal. We have to maintain the public access to the canal. So it's not on we're not maintaining their site, but we're maintaining the public portion of it around there.
Yeah, it's really the North Odd Block and the area lawn, right? All the programming, so the grass cutting, the events, picking up the garbage, shoveling, everything Be Our Guest does for ECHDC. This money, helps pay for offset those expenses.
County Executive.
Thank you. A couple questions. number one, what is being built and what I thought is part of the North Arc block, the elevator shaft that's coming up?
That is a small building. It's a PCACC is building that building. Because we're losing the pit for all of our back of house needs. That building's gonna be built. We're gonna have public restrooms in there. We're gonna have public accessibility from the first floor down. We're gonna be storing all our winter for the ice rinks in the lower level. We'll have office space and a visitor space on the upper level.
That had always been a separate
A separate part.
property right on the end of the.
Correct.
A substation for the police as well, correct? That not.
No, we have a security. That's not a substation.
Okay.
It'll be a security office.
A security office,
Yes.
okay, all right.
When this was originally approved back in 23, forgive me, I haven't been, I think, since meeting here since 23. Had a busy year last year. There was still some question as to the amount of affordable housing units that were going to be included as part of this. It does describe 351 market rate and affordable residential units. Is there an actual breakdown?
There is a breakdown. So 50% of the housing is market rate. And then the other 50%, I'd like to provide the exact breakdown to you, county executive that separately, but there is a split of 40, 60, 80, and 110% AMI of the other remaining half.
Okay. And then finally, in the approval last year, it had 450 parking spaces in the structured ramp. Now, the base of the project with the subgrade parking will provide approximately 184. What happened?
They did during their due diligence, they discovered the water level, which is there. So to put 2 decks in there became a little bit of an engineering feat that would be maybe a little bit higher cost of the project. They are still exploring possibly, I think 184 would probably be the lowest. They're still trying to see if they can build maybe above add a little bit. But the original, when they proposed it, they were expecting to dig deeper into the earth in the discovery of the water table and how much, I guess, the structural capacity of what would happen is why that reduction occurred.
If I remember correctly, the 450 was a number chosen to, number one, ensure that everyone had housing and a parking spot if they wanted one, and number two, that there would be parking available for the public. Now we're retailers there. Now it appears that there would need to be basically 50% of the housing units would have a potential parking spot, or is that going to be reserved for other purposes such as the public or the retailer tenants of the property?
There is still plans to have a portion of that parking open to the public. I don't have the exact percentage, but that is part of our mandate to have some public parking available in that structure.
Okay.
I don't have the number on it as they're continuing to work with the design, but the reduction did happen when they discovered the water table and they could not afford going deeper than what it is.
Yeah, if you could provide through Mr. Castle the breakdown on affordable units by 40, 80, 10, and then also the expectation of parking, that would be appreciated.
Definitely.
Valid points. Thank you very much. It's going to be a game changer. I mean, the beginning of red development along with Marine Drive Apartments and other development, there's going to be a lot of construction down there. So Mark has been busy trying to do the logistics so people can walk around safely with all the construction and materials as well. But it's the beginning of our vision for the waterfront, and to have 351 families there. It's going to be exciting as well. And you're right. I want parking close to my unit. It's a bit, especially in the winter, right?
Well, the parking will be an interesting methodology to explore. The county executive definitely brings up a good point, but if we really want the type of urbanism that we're trying to encourage down there, not having cars and having people live in those units, maybe without a car or with limited use of a car, is what's going to drive them using the services that are actually down there. So I think if we want density, it can't be car centric, or we're never going to get what we want. But I think your point is a good one, that you also have to give people an ability to get to work and do other things. So I think it's going to be an interesting analysis over the next couple of years between us and the developer and the public to figure out really what it needs to be.
And you're on to that, right? I'm sorry.
I actually agree with Eric's point of view. I think you want the density not so much worried as much about the parking for the tenants, because the tenants, we don't want parking, not worried about for people who come. They want to come to Canal Side. It's not the easiest place to park.
Yeah, and it's only gonna get more complicated once they start Marine Drive, right? So, you know, and all the public spaces that are gonna be lost to equipment and contractors, it's gonna be complicated. That's why I think this is a topic that's gonna need a lot more work.
At the end, all is going to be stacked.
Oh, for sure.
Has this gone to the planning board yet with the city or that?
We do
comes-
not, it'll go through our design review.
So they don't have to go to the planning board with the city with
They
their
will,
design?
once the
and-
design review committee approves the design, they'll go to the planning. board
Okay,
For recommendation.
For recommendation, it's not a
The
review.
planning board gives a recommendation. I think it's before ECHDC's makes the final decision.
Oh.
Design guidance have to come. There's a design review committee, right,
Correct.
Mark? And then ultimately this board will have to approve the final design.
But the design hasn't been changed meaningfully from what we saw previously.
Not today, so not today, just a little bit of reduction in the underground portion. So,
Is,
yes, go ahead.
is there a way, I mean, Buffalo is a very car dependent area, right? I think it takes like somewhat of a shift, a cultural shift for people to get more comfortable with using other modes of transportation. I mean, I think the good thing about Canal Side is that that's where the train stops. You know, the train goes right there. And this has nothing to do with this proposal in and of itself. Penrose is a great developer. But like in addition to the density that we're adding down there, which is absolutely necessary for continued urbanization, is there a way we can work closely with like NFTA or, you know, other transportation providers to help educate folks on like, this is how you get to Canal Side, these are recommendations, because, you know, in a lot of other cities, I think people are more accustomed
Yep.
to using alternative modes of transportation. Just a conversation we can have at a different time.
I'm in contact with NTA, a number of things about transportation to not only Canal Side, but also the outer harbor. So I can continue to keep those conversations and see how we can, whether it's routes or how they advertise or, you know, timing of things, but we are communicating.
Okay, great.
you raise a good point, because thinking of again, I don't know how it's gonna be spent with our guests doing marketing, that could be a great messaging and billboards or whatever, like, here's, because it is a block in your mind.
Yeah.
Parking's 2 hours.
Or even e-bikes, like,
Yeah.
you know, there's other modes of, you know, you go to DC, you can get off the train and grab an e-bike and get to your hotel. And it's fun. So, you know, I think these other modes of transportation can really add. a
We are
lively-
adding e-bikes out at bike rental at Canal Side this year. So
That's
we'll
great.
add a big container here for rentals.
Okay.
Mark, I'd like to make one more comment. When Mark took over as president, one of the biggest issues that you stressed that you would like to push through is connectivity to all the various points at Canal Side, Inner Harbor, Outer Harbor, city, suburbs. So I think
Folks,
that you
I am
touched
remiss.
on
I
this.
apologize profusely. I was on another meeting earlier and I was writing an email and I totally
Okay,
lost
Rich,
track
we're
of
in the
the
middle,
time and
we're in the
forgot.
middle of the meeting. Thank you
Oh,
so
In 2
much.
seconds, I am embarrassed
apology
and
accepted.
I am so sorry.
There you go.
Rich,
I
it's
just had an
okay.
unexpected thing
So,
happen today. and I
Thank
lost
you,
track of
Rich.
time writing it.
All right, at this time, all right, so the requested action, director to request to authorize the corporation to enter into a sale and development agreement and all other related agreements with North All Block property. Authorize funding for the project in the amount not to exceed $10 million and authorize the disposition of the North All Block property.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the board with regard to this item?
I have one question, if I may. Once it's privately owned,
Yes.
how would the bidding process go for any of the development, the $215 million development? Would it be privately bid?
Private.
Privately bid, okay.
Any other questions?
Final question, has there been,
I
guess
Okay.
one final question in regards to, considering it is going to be privately owned, has there been any discussion with the owner developer seeking tax breaks from the Erie County Industrial Development Agency? I have not heard of any, but is that an expectation of part of the project?
They are seeking tax breaks, but not through DC IDA. It would be, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're exploring it, whether probably through ESD. I mean, we've been working with the county and the city because there is you have that home. Dan, do you know what the name of your tax incentive proposals for the housing portfolio?
Well, we have affordable housing pilots, but I think this project may not have met the
That's right.
percentage requirements for the county's
Yes.
pilot. Right. Only, yeah.
It's at this point, it's expected it's going to be an ESD. We'll give a pilot, but we're still working through the details of that.
Okay.
All right. All right. As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item, so I will now entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries, and I want to thank everyone for your participation in today's meeting. Now there being no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I have a question first,
Okay.
if I may. I just would like to know the status of the Sinatra project.
The status of the Sinatra project is that they are working on, the last update I got last week was they are waiting for completing their funding with local funding. And I'm supposed to get an update actually this afternoon as well on the status of that.
Appreciate if you can push that. I've talked to representatives and I've heard the same thing for the last 3 months.
That is correct. Yep.
Keep the county executive informed.
Has there been any discussion about pulling a performance bond?
We have,
It'll be the first time ECHD has done that, and I think basically Stephen and I are the two who remember that.
This is private. We don't have a performance.
We
bond.
don't have a performance bond.
No, we have the right to take property back, which, there's liquidated damages, potential.
Steve, could you speak up, please?
Yeah, I mean, there's provisions in the agreements about, timing. Clearly, they're not going to meet the timelines for finishing construction. So there's remedies for liquidated damages to start, and then ultimately for ECHDC to claw back the property if required. But clearly, the number one priority would be to get the project done. So Mark's been working with Sinatra, and either for them to bring financing or bring in a partner to get the job moving and completed.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right. And so now there being no further, I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll motion.
Thanks, Sam.
Second.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for everyone for your participation in today's meeting, and thank you, Rebecca, for joining us today. Everybody have a nice day.
thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie.